Thank you, Sue. Would you join me in a moment of prayer today? Most gracious and holy God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. All right, so today we are embarking on a new sermon series called Do Unto Others. And the timing seems to be pretty perfect for this series because it talks about these attributes that Jesus displays through the love that he shared for each of us. And so we're looking at each of these attributes as ways for us to be disciples of Jesus Christ in what can seem and appear to be a very divisive world. And so I wanted to share with you a couple of things. First of all, the word for kindness comes from the root word of hesed, which literally means kindness, and it also is noted 250 times or more just in the Old Testament. So it's pretty important. It's something that Jesus not only spoke with his words, but enacted with he acted it out. So we know exactly, and we know how to model and follow this model. And so I wanted to share with you this study, and it's from Dr. Michelle Robin. And this is a bit subjective in some ways, so just understand that. One who practices kindness in general is happier, experiences less stress, has better relationships overall, is more successful in business, has happier marriages. Now that kind of goes with the relationship thing, I think, and they live longer. They live longer. Now, we know that there are exceptions to the rule. I'm pretty sure Billy Joel was the one who said only the good die young, So I know that we've seen exceptions to the rule, but overall, in general, as I said, this was a subjective example. Here's a poll that was taken in September of 2022, and 75% of those polled agreed with this. To restore peace and unity, leaders need to model kindness and understanding. Can I get an amen? Yeah, there you go. All right. Perhaps, I'm just going to put this out here, perhaps we need to model that as well. Perhaps we need to model kindness and understanding as well. I don't know if you all, I've shared with you several times that I have a very large family, particularly on my mother's side. She was the baby of 12. So I have a lot of cousins, a lot of extended family. Think about the last time you all went to any kind of family gathering. Whether or not it was a family reunion, a holiday, a wedding, whatever. Think back to that when you've got the extended family all there. I'm just going to poll the room here because we're doing polls right about now, all right? Poll the room. What are the two things that you never talk about at family gatherings? Yo, man, you nailed it. That's it. Exactly. Politics and religion. You don't talk about politics and you don't talk about religion. Why? Why don't we talk about these things? Because talk about divisive, right? We can have family members on the opposite sides as far as the East is from the West on certain issues that speak into politics or religion. And so we kind of avoid that, don't we? We want to keep the peace, right? We want to still call them family after this event. We want to just still have those relationships, don't we? And yet, is it possible to be kind to those who don't agree with us? Think about that 1% of our DNA that look around this room. Look how different we physically look from one another. And that's only one part of our DNA, right? 1%, that is the variance that we have. 99% of who we are as human beings is the same across the board. And yet, what do? We focus on that 1%, don't we? Any of y'all had kids that brought home report cards? Do you remember when they would bring home the report card? What did you always zero in on? The one bad grade, right? The one thing they didn't do so great in. That seems to be what we just sort of zero in on, right? It's that 1%. And it can be so divisive. And so in times like this, can we show kindness to those with whom we don't agree? I am following the story of Hurricane Helene very, very closely, as well. I'm sure you all are as well. I have family in Asheville, North Carolina. And for the longest time, I could not reach my cousin. one of my cousins we had not heard from. Very concerned, and we finally did hear from her. And I'm just going to talk a little bit, and I'm going to digress a little. I like to tell you when I digress a little bit, so I'm just going to digress a little bit here. And so she wasn't able to, like everyone else in that area, they lost power, they lost water, she lost all communication. So the entire internet, phone lines, everything is down. And so her church is a very large church that already had a lot of things in place, but they became a staging area for the Red Cross. They became a staging area for groups like Starlink. I don't know if you're familiar with Starlink. It is a satellite internet option. And so the Starlink truck came to her church and was passing out these little gizmos so that folks could contact their family and let them know, or get in contact with those who were still out of reach. And so they were mobilized immediately. So she was involved in that so much that she sort of wasn't connecting with her, and everyone there knew that she was fine, but those of us who were kind of far away didn't. And so when we finally got a hold of her, I was extremely proud of my cousin and her church. And I can tell you that in many ways, we are on opposites as far as these two things that we talk about or don't talk about, politics and religion. But I'm going to keep bragging on her for just a minute. About 5 years ago, I got to visit her church. Very large church, different denomination. I will put that out there. Different denomination, large church. In the place where they were, they had a large campus and realized there was no Christian school of any kind in the county. And so they established one, K through 12, accredited, they established a school. They realized that one county over was the poorest county in the state of North Carolina. And so they purposefully gave the building and its property to this school, separated it out, and moved their large church to the poorest county in the state on purpose. They did this on purpose. We don't agree on how we practice our religion. We don't agree on a lot of things, and yet they are sharing kindness like you wouldn't believe. And one thing I'm seeing over and over and over again, when folks are in need, we don't tend to screen whether or not they're worthy of our help. We tend to just give out that help, right? We tend to just help because there are people in need. We don't decide whether or not they're worthy of that help. We don't decide whether or not they think the same as we do. We don't decide that I'm going to help this one, but not that one. We do what we can. And so this church has been just so active. The latest I heard, I got information just yesterday on this. They're calling in anybody with an ATV that can take whatever supplies they can and get to these remote areas where folks are trapped. And her family they lost power, they lost water, they lost their internet, they lost phone, and they consider themselves the blessed ones because they still have their homes. So many don't. And so they're doing what they can. They've set up tent areas in the church parking lot for folks to be there. I'm very proud. I'm very proud of that. And yet, if we were to sit down and talk politics, we'd be over here. That's okay. But you know what? We are united under the cross of Jesus Christ. Amen? We are united in this calling to share kindness, even with those to whom we don't agree. So what does it look like? Maybe sometimes it's just one of those simple gestures, but maybe that's a little difficult too. You all have heard my confessions about my driving in Frederick County, Can I just put that out there? It's a little bit of a challenge to drive in Frederick County at certain times in particular. Think about those times when you are cut off in traffic, and then later on that person needs to get back in front of you. How willing are we to share kindness? Just now, this confession is good for the soul, right? How willing are we? I'm reminded often, I live in the state of Pennsylvania, so I only have one tag on my car. I only have a back tag. And my front tag says clergy. It says clergy. So there are certain ways that I would probably not want to drive with that, and what about any of us? What if you've got the little fish sticker on your, or the WGTS bumper sticker on you, What image are we presenting as we go through these inane things like driving, right? Sometimes it can be hard. The difference between sharing kindness and a transaction is a big one, okay? So if you share kindness with someone, if you give something to someone, but you're expecting something in return, that's a transaction, isn't it? That's a transaction. If you expect quid pro quo, I think is the term, right? I give you something, but only if you're going to give me something back. You know, I'll treat you kindly, but only if you're kind to me. Quid pro quo, right? That's a transaction. Sometimes it's hard to share kindness with those who are unkind. Can we agree that in many ways our world is unkind? Can we agree on that? Yeah. And so to share kindness, to share the light of Christ, that is our calling, isn't it? That is our calling. It can be inconvenient, and so I do believe it's okay to have some boundaries. Jesus talked about doing the difficult. He talked about sharing kindness with the unkind. He talked about showing God's love even to those who are, in many ways, unlovable or struggling. And so I wanted to share this quote with you from Mother Teresa. If you don't know who she is, she was a Catholic nun, did a lot of work with the poor. And so I wanted to share this with you. It is inscribed on the wall of the children's home that she established in Calcutta. And it's called the Anyway poem. People are often unreasonable, illogical, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will find some false friends and some true enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest and frank, people may cheat you. Be honest and frank anyway. What you spend years building, someone could destroy overnight. Build anyway. The good you do today, people will often forget tomorrow. Do good anyway. Give the world the best you have, and it may never be enough. Give the world the best you've got anyway. You see, in the final analysis, it is between you and God. It is never between you and them anyway. It was never between you and them. It is between you and God. I think today we get to celebrate the ultimate kindness that was given to each of us as we come to the table, the communion table. Today is known as World Communion Sunday. Christians around the world have designated this particular Sunday as the day to share Holy Communion. And we don't share it in the same ways. We don't conduct it in the same ways. And yet, we are welcomed at the table. We are included at the table. We are all here, and we can accept Christ's forgiveness and go from this place knowing that we are children of God. That root word for kindness is the same one for kin. Y'all, if you're Southern, you know what kin means, right? You know, family. Family. We are family. And we are all united beneath the cross of Christ. And so we can celebrate what Christ has done for us at the table on this very special Communion Sunday. I pray that we take the message of kindness from this place and are able to share it in every way that we can. May God continue to bless us as we do what we can to be disciples who make disciples who then love like Jesus. Amen.